So today I'm going to show Anissa a horror movie trailer so I can get her reactions to it. So it's part of the start of our audience research. So it's just further stuff which I've decided to do, but it's not like final audience research. So it's just a test to see different reactions and different views in terms of the concept of genre, how it relates to society, and the typical conventions. Okay, let's start.
Guys, come on, please.
Sat nav is broken. Gone completely off the map.
It's nearly better spots than this, Jack, really.
Judge a book by its cover.
These kids are here because they're brainwashed. Why don't they just cut me a bit of slack?
Driving all day. Let's walk to the pub. It's a nice evening.
There's some around these parts that get milk for strangers.
It's a lovely weekend and a brilliant future. We need to phone an ambulance, Jeff. Where's your phone?
Give us some tools to play.
We're all gonna die. We gotta stick together. Do you understand me?
On the way, the show. Let me tell thee all the fate that did befall. Hey,
So question 1. Do you believe that this trailer reinforces Neil's concept of genre in terms of genre repeating elements with difference?
I think this trailer did have elements that were repeated of the horror genre.
So like the typical conventions, so like the music,
Yeah.
it sort of evoked a reaction, even though you didn't have much of a reaction, but that's because you like horror, and you like horror, don't you?
Yeah.
So it's like you like watching scary things, so it's like different people have different reactions.
Yeah.
So what elements of difference do you think that it had in that trailer in terms of like story, but also like the genre, the typical elements of the genre?
I think it was different from normal horror trailers because it didn't seem as scary. It was kind of like, because it started off with a family when normally it's like a group of friends or like...
So it sort of subverts the normal,
Yeah.
the typical group of people that you see in horror.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was quite gory as well. That is a typical element of horror. So that is the element it repeats, but it's
Yeah.
different in terms of how the protagonists are presented. So question 2. Do you think this trailer reflects some of the fears of society? So like, in terms of sociology and also intellectual media studies, the moral panics. So do you think it represents some fears which are in society?
I think it does because in the trailer they go to a place they've never been before. And
It's like isolated location.
and that happens in society as well. You don't know what to expect, really.
So it also kind of links with when people get outcasted from society as well.
Yeah.
So like in terms of sociology, which is a link, would be like the gypsies, and then with horror it's like the villains tend to be outcast because of their appearance or if they're like a different subgroup in society. Okay, so question 3. Todorov is another genre theorist, and he said that a new genre is always the transformation of one or several old ones. Do you agree with this statement? So it's the idea that a new genre is created from the old genres. So like Frankenstein, it had the typical villain and then the damsel in distress. So would that be something it has stemmed from to create a new genre of horror? Do you agree with that? So is there like typical conventions that you've seen which might remind you of an old horror movie?
I think yes, there was, because in the trailer one of them gets injured, which is a normal convention in most horror movies.
Yeah.
And then after that, it sort of events lead up to each one.
So it kind of links to
Being-
narrative. So like someone
Yeah.
always has to fall. There always has to be a chase scene.
Yeah.
So that's like that is a typical element of the old genre being in the new genre.
Yeah.
So it's like it's been transformed into something new in this new genre because it was made in 2012, obviously. Okay, so 4. What are the typical conventions of horror you see portrayed? So we've kind of touched on this, but you could talk about like mise en scène, how the characters look. But it's a British film, so that's like another subversion, as it's usually American. But what conventions stood out to you?
The conventions that stood out to me was the isolated location, and the fact that one of them got injured and then the rest are in danger.
And also like the no sense of authority as well. Social
Yeah.
order's always, it's like they're in a like, it kind of links to the isolated location because they're just there on their own. There's no one
Yeah.
to sort out the problem. Okay, so question 5. Do you think there are instances where horror can be original?
I think it can be original because people develop their own ideas and then they adapt it into something different.
Yeah, so they may take something old and then make it new, but it's
Yeah.
still new at the same time. Okay, 6. Do you think the title, which is Inbred, interlinks with the genre of this film? So like horror. Does Inbred give a horror vibe to you?
I don't think the title gave much of a horror vibe. It kind of sounded very normal, like a normal film.
It just sounds odd. I just thought inbred what? But it kind of links to horror in such because it's like fear of the unknown. You're not really sure what it is. But in terms of the plot, do you think inbred linked with the narrative and the plot?
I don't think it did that much.
Or it kind of wasn't a clear link.
No.
Yeah, I agree. 7. In terms of camera techniques and editing, what stood out the most to you? Do you think the speed evoked no effect?
I think the speed was quite fast, but in a horror trailer it's normally really fast. I think
Do you think it was more slow compared to other trailers you've seen?
some of it was slow, some of it was fast, but it did follow the conventions of other horror movies.
Because it started off slow, like when everything was all right.
Yeah.
And then when it started to build to a climax, when things started to go wrong, that's when there was like jump cuts, lots of cuts in
Yeah.
the scenes. So what camera technique stood out to you? So like close-up shot or a canted angle, or like in terms of movement, was it shaky at any parts? Did you catch any of that?
I think there were a lot of close-ups on the violent scenes, and the rest of it was like just short, jumpy scenes.
Yeah, so it's like the close-ups was like highlight the reality of the situation they're in. So it's like the danger. Okay, so question 8. Do you think the sound adds effect? So we kind of touched on this as well. So like it kind of built as well. So
Yeah.
what stood out in terms of sound? Like describe how the sound felt to you while you're watching.
I think during the trailer the sound it fit with the scenes. Like at the beginning it was
So it was
slow.
synchronized.
Yeah, it was synchronized, and it was slow at the beginning. Then when it started when all the events started coming together, then it became really fast and scary.
Okay. Question 9. In terms of the hermeneutic code, I'll repeat that again, sorry. It's basically the concept which Barthas came up with, and it's basically Barthas Enigma code theory, and the hermeneutic code is a part of it. And he basically said that the hermeneutic code is when the story is not fully explained and the full truth is avoided, which keeps the audience guessing to what is going to happen. So do you think that this element is portrayed in the trailer you just watched?
I don't think it's portrayed very well because I can kind of guess what happens in the end. I think a lot of the story was given through the trailer already.
Yeah, it told you he was going to be the villain. It told you, it didn't leave like the aspect of mystery. Do you think it would have been better if it used the hermeneutic code in the trailer?
Yeah, I think it would have been better because then it would have made me want to watch the film and wonder what's going to happen next.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you, Elisa.